to another episode of Certified Forgotten. This is, of course, the horror podcast where we talk about movies that have 5 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. If that was what you were looking for, you're in the right place. I am, as always, Donato always gives me shit because I do the same intro, but I am one half of your Matts. I am Matt Monagle, and I am joined by my intrepid co-host, Matt Donato. How you doing, buddy?
Good, and I'm not going to give you shit this time because you know what? We are 2 Matts that make one whole Matt, and I'm okay with that.
I figure if you have a good patter at the beginning of a podcast, you don't change it.
Yeah, cycle, repetition, that's what keeps people coming back.
Familiarity, comfort, those are the words I would use.
But then when I just do things like put a little dramatic piano in there.
Oh, God.
You never should have told me how to use the sound effects. You really never should have.
I made the mistake of allowing Donato to be the host this time around, and that does come with all of the streaming service that we use, the live chat service we use, has a bunch of piano effects in there. So I don't know what he's programmed. I can't tell you what's going to come up later. But we're not here to talk about Donato's ability to fuck with our soundboard. We're here to talk about horror. And this week we have, I mean, I'm just going to say it, probably the guy that's watched more horror movies than anybody I know, certainly anybody that I've heard of. Donato, introduce our royalty guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say, as someone who watches as many horror movies as I do, honestly, I got the idea from people like who I'm about to introduce. You know him from Horror a Day. You know him from Colin's Crip on Birth Movies Death. It's Mr. Brian Collins. Say hello.
Hello. Hi. I'm not a Matt. I feel kind of like a third wheel here.
It's kind of better this way. You don't want to be one of us because we had Barone on one time, Matt Barone, and it was just a clusterfuck of, so Matt, what do you think about this? And then everyone's sitting there silently going like, well, which Matt is he talking about?
Yeah, it was just a wall of Matts and Jersey accents is what happened on that podcast.
Oh, it was aggressive. It was aggressive.
Well, Brian, first of all, thank you for joining us. The first part of our podcast, we always like to talk about kind of the background of horror for our guests and how they got into it. And we're going to talk about Horror Movie a Day in a minute, but let's look back even farther than that. What were your earliest entrances into the genre? Like, were you one of those VHS kids, one of those video store kids? Like, when did you start watching horror movies?
Oh, I always feel bad because I don't want anybody to think my mom was like this terrible, absentee, horrible person. But I was watching them at like 5 or 6 because she took me to see Poltergeist 2 when that came out in theaters. And I had already seen the first one, and it came out in theaters not too long after my 6th birthday. So I guess I just had the interest because it wasn't like she was like, "You're gonna watch this," Like I enjoyed it. I'd be asking her like, "Oh, let's watch this." So yeah, very young. I mean, Gremlins. Just for people that don't memorize release dates, so this would be like 86, 87. But then I moved up to the harder stuff, like R-rated stuff, I think when I was 7 or 8. And I distinctly remember she rented Friday the 13th 4, 5, and 6 at a time when the 7 was not out on video yet. So this would have been at the latest, like spring into summer 88, when I was 8 years old. Already watching the Friday the 13th, and I think I had seen Chainsaw Massacre at that point as well. So yeah, it's just been a constant kind of thing, almost as long as I can remember watching movies at all.
What was it? Do you remember as a kid, kind of like what initially drew you to it? Like, what was?
No, I think it might have been. It had to have been Gremlins, I think, because I had that. Older listeners will remember these things. You'd get a tape with a storybook, cassette tape, and you'd listen to the story, and there would be a little chime to turn the page. If you go on YouTube, I'm sure somebody has uploaded the whole tape.
Those are great.
And I have, to this day, when I watch Gremlins, I can hear the chime at certain points, like after a certain line of dialogue or whatever. I expect to hear that chime. But I don't know what it was like versus, I mean, because I say all this, and then I always like throw in the fact that I didn't see Star Wars until I was a senior in high school. Like those movies completely passed me by. The second time I ever saw the first, New Hope was when they did that re-release. The special edition re-releases. So, people, the original versions, it means nothing to me. I'm more familiar with that other one. And I distinctly remember when I went to the bathroom at one point, I came back and asked my friend, I'm like, what did I miss? And he's like laughing his ass off, like, oh, classic Collins. What a great gag. What did you miss? I'm like, yeah, no, really, I don't remember what happened in that scene because I've seen this movie once before. So yeah, it was always just horror instead of like the normal stuff kids would like gravitate to with that, in the '80s, like the Star Wars and the Indiana Jones. Also another thing I didn't see until later.
So I have a question for you then. Playing off of that, just playing off the sense that number one, I understand because as someone who's I dove into horror headfirst recently, and it's all I watch, and it is hard to keep up with everything else when you do go to the horror genre so hard. It
Mhm.
just becomes like, what can I digest? What can I take? But I'm curious to hear from your perspective then. What is the Star Wars of the horror genre in your eyes? Like, what's that one franchise that when someone says they haven't seen it yet, you're like, oh wait, you have to go see this.
I mean, I guess it would probably have to be the Friday the 13th, I think, just because there's more of a consistency there. Like the Halloween series just goes completely up and down, and I think the Nightmare on Elm Streets do too. Um, and the other, they all just become kind of a mess. But like Friday the 13th always had like a free even both audience reception. Obviously, some made more money than others, but there's no outright horrible entry the way we look at Halloween Resurrection or the Nightmare remake or like the direct-to-video Hellraisers or the last our Chainsaw 4. Like there's no like
Yeah.
obvious low-hanging fruit target for the Friday the 13th series. I mean, yeah, like people obviously will rank them all the time. Obviously, there's going to be some at the bottom, but there's not a lot of consistency there, the way you find it with the other franchises. And there's just something that's just like they're more comfort foody. I think because they're so simple, there's no like mythology to get into the way that you kind of had to like follow along like on Halloween with like the cult shit and all that other nonsense, or or weird like complete diversions. It's just always just Friday the 13th. And I think it's similar to Star Wars in a way that like you recognize that world. Even there's different creators come and go. There you don't even need to see Jason to kind of know like, all right, this is definitely a Friday the 13th, not a Freddy movie, not a Texas Chainsaw or whatever.
And it's funny you're talking about that because I think there have been times when actually everyone on this podcast was playing the Friday the 13th video game at the same time, and we
Nice.
just didn't know it at the time because I know I've played with both of you outside of the same game, but I'm almost positive we played together, and I think it's for that reason why the game works a little bit. And just like not even
Oh,
to
for
talk about
sure.
the game, but it's just funny that you say how the Friday the 13th franchise, it is 100%. You can pick it up at any point.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen. You know what the structure is, and it's funny to think about that in the game sense, how we all just kind of jumped in the games, and each time we played was like a different sequel almost.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, when I die in that game, I never understood the people that would like quit out. I'm like, why are you quitting? Oh, this is great. Now I get to watch this like little, 20-minute, if I die first, which is often because I'm not that good at it, nearly 20-minute, little slasher movie. You switch the cameras around, you get a chase, and it's like Harry's music is pumping, and I'm like, this is great. I'm just sitting there with my drink, and then it's like, all right, the match is over. It's time to play again. I was like,
You're like, wait, I just want to watch some more.
I could do that too.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah,
killed again.
apparently you've never played with Donato when he's in a particular mood, because that kind of that when he is Jason, that takes all of the fun out of it because he's just an asshole. There's no other way to
Yeah.
put it.
I try to be fair when I'm Jason. I don't kill anybody right away. Like I let them like find their bearings, maybe find an item.
There are
I
rules. I mean,
Yeah,
there are rules to the horror genre. There's rules to playing Jason.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
there's not. The rule when I play Jason is if you don't get away from me quick enough, you die. I don't care how quick that takes.
When people had microphones, I would ask them trivia. If I was Jason, I'd get up and I'd be like, like who directed Manhattan, and if they could answer correctly, I'd be like, all right, bye, and I'd just leave, warp away.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I wish I could have watched that game. Like I die
Yeah.
early and I just watch you asking
Yeah.
randos trivia and I'd be like, wait, what?
That would be now. Somebody's got to write a horror movie about like a horror icon who kills if they don't know the trivia to their own horror movie lexicon. Oh man, I would watch the shit out of that.
Wait, did you just write Scream 5?
Probably. Who
Shit,
knows?
he's on to us.
All I know is David Arquette is back. That was a good tangent. Brian, I want to ask you too about Horror Movie a Day, because I think that's for a lot of folks, myself included, that was sort of the introduction to your work.
Mhm.
And you made it through, was it 2,500 films, 2,500
Yeah, it was
days.
2,500. Yeah, it
Hmm.
wasn't 2,500 days because there'd be like festivals and stuff where I was watching
Sure.
more than one a day. So it was just a little over 6 years all in. So with whatever that math is, 1,800, 30 days, whatever it was.
Yeah. And I mentioned this when we were talking to Larry. You did a really good interview with IndieWire with Matt Singer, where
Yeah,
you kind of talked about it. You took what I appreciated is kind of like a larger lens in terms of how it affected relationships and your marriage and some, not just the like, how do I find a new thing to watch every day? But
yeah.
how do you feel about it now with a little bit of distance between the project and you?
I'm amazed when I look at it, like, how did I do it? Like, I mean, right now, not to bring it all down to this constant topic, but like, I'm home every day, right? I've been home for 2 months,
Mhm.
and I think I've watched less movies. Like somehow I've only updated the site. For those who don't read it, I still update the site occasionally, but it's more like horror movie a week now. Um, it's just like how did I do this when I went to work every day, when I went out with my friends? Like I can't imagine having that time now to both read, watch the movie and write the review up after. Um, but it's just a weird way that time kind of shifts around, and so yeah, I mean, I kind of miss it sometimes. I do because what happens now, I actually kind of get jealous of you, Donato, because I see you watching these like batshit, who in God's name wanted to see this movie kind of things. Not necessarily asylum mockbusters, but on that similar level. And like, I don't have time to watch any of those anymore. Like, whenever I do watch something, it's usually like, I heard this was really good. I got it, a disc delivered to me to review from, Scream Factory or Arrow or Vinegar Syndrome or whatever. Um, I don't go out and just like, all right, what am I going to watch today? And like go into Netflix and just scroll around until I find something I haven't seen yet, because that used to be part of the process. So it's just like, I wonder how much just, you know, the Kathy's Curse kind of movies of the world, like modern, that I'm missing because I just don't, that's just not a thing anymore. I'm going to only watch, what I hear about or what specifically catches my interest versus, well, I need a movie to get today, and this monster movie is there, and I'll watch that because I just had to watch something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was gonna say
There's a
don't be
specific
too
desire to
jealous.
watch. Yeah, there's a specific desire, but I mean, there's a charm in watching that stuff too. And then again, it's like you watch 7 or 8 movies. If one of them's a gem, that's actually a pretty good batting average.
No, and I think like to go off what you were saying, like 100%. Number one, don't be too jealous because
Yeah,
you have much more important things to do. Like you actually have like a kid and are like
yeah.
raising a life. Like I will watch the evil little doll movie that no one's gonna see because it's terrible. You keep doing important things. But no, I think that is that's the charm of Horror a Day too, and that's the charm of exactly what you said is when I get through 7 or 8. I think that's actually a very fair average to say. Like, it takes me a good 8, like 1 to 2 star reviews before I
Mhm.
find that ninth film that's
Yeah.
like recently for me was like Mutant Blast.
Mhm.
And it's a film that I knew nothing about. It hit Troma VOD out of nowhere. And Rob Hunter randomly was like, oh shit, I saw this at Toronto After Dark. I love this film. And it's still like Rob Hunter was the only one that liked it. And no one
Mhm.
was still talking about it. And no one knew what this movie was. But I have the time right now.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, not to bring it up like you said, Collins, but it's where we are right now. We're all home, and for me, I've found comfort in the fact that I will just keep writing just to keep going. So I find that Mutant Blast, I find those weird gems, and yeah, most of them are gonna suck, but when you find that one that's so good,
Mhm.
that it brings it right back to the Horror a Day stuff. And not to nerd out, but I remember reading one of your entries and feeling like a kinship in a way because you were writing about like you had a wedding weekend, and I
Right.
forget what movies you had to watch, but you're like, listen, I got to do this. I'm staying the course. We're gonna get through this. And it was your journey of like having to watch a movie. Like I forget where you did it, like before the reception, or like you're squeezing it in anywhere you can. And it was like that weekend I was kind of reading it. I was going to a wedding. And I made my girlfriend lay in bed while I watched The Greasy Strangler. And she's
Nice.
just going like, we have a wedding to be at in like an hour. And I'm like, we're going to get through The Greasy Strangler.
It was funny when it got embarrassing at one point. I remember I was at Comic Con, and I didn't have a portable DVD player. This might have been why I ended up getting a portable DVD player. And I check in my hotel, and I bring a regular DVD player to hook up to the TV inside the hotel room, and the video input on the TV is busted. TV itself works, but the video input doesn't. I'm like, fuck. What am I gonna do? Like, I can't just assume there's gonna be a horror movie on TV that I can watch, and even if there wasn't, like, it's and I gotta be able to like pause it, what I mean,
Yeah.
rewind, break it up because I have a half hour here and 40 minutes or whatever. So I have to go down to the front desk. Now again, this is Comic Con. I don't know if either of you guys go, but Comic Con, like the hotel situation there is a fucking nightmare.
Right.
Rooms book up instantly. Everybody's scrambling. People are like packing like 6 people into a room because there's no availability. And I had to go down to the front desk and be like, yeah, excuse me, like I think is it possible to switch rooms? They're like, oh, is something wrong with the room? I'm like, no, room's fine. I'm like, it's just the TV. The TV's broken. I'm like, not necessarily the TV. The video input of the TV's broken. And this lady's just staring at me like, what the fuck is a video input? What are you like? Why do you need this? Like, it's a hotel. You go to bed. That's it. And luckily, it was Wednesday or Thursday, so not everybody was there yet. They still had empty rooms, so they were able to switch me into one. And presumably, whoever got the one I originally had did not need the video input. But I just remember feeling so stupid. Like I would rather do this, embarrass myself, and look like a weirdo in the front desk, and probably piss them off having to switch me around, rather than just be like, "Hey guys, sorry, something came up. I have to skip 3 days."
Yeah.
um, but I got the portable after that, so I never had to worry about anybody's video inputs ever again. Um, and but yeah, like times like that, it would just be funny. It was just like I was so dedicated to not missing a day. Like, who would have known? I could have just like, I forget who it was. Somebody thought I was like banking the reviews. Like, I just like literally just have a review to post every day. I'm like, no, I'm watching it every day. Like, if anything, it's the other way around. Like, sometimes I would go, especially at things like Comic Con or if like going on vacation or whatever. The reviews would kind of back up because I'd be watching but not have time to write anything. And then it'd be like a week later, I'd be like, all right, here's all the reviews, and I'd be like, all right, so that movie I watched, that Children of the Corn ripoff that I watched last week, what was that one? Yeah, okay, what can I say about that? But never banking the review ahead of time.
Yeah, what's insane to me is like you were living the festival lifestyle for like multiple years because
Yeah.
that just brings me right back to exactly like you said. You see a movie and you got to cram out a review
Yep.
and you keep yourself on a schedule. And I mean, that's exhausting. So the fact that you were able to keep that as long as you could,
Mm.
because again, even me doing my stuff right now, it's still like, the most I'll hit is like 5 reviews a week.
Mm.
And I need that break. I need to step away and be like, okay, I just reviewed Creepy Tales of Pizza and Gore, Evil Little Fucking Things, like
Yeah.
dumbass ghost movie number 17. I'm like, I need to go, just not go insane.
Yeah.
So the fact that you just kept doing it is a testament to your dedication and also insanity.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely a good mix of both.
Well, let me ask, because Donato brought up festivals, and I'm kind of curious. I think of a lot of the referrals that we usually ask our guests about, sort of the festival scene and getting referrals, getting stuff recommended by other people that are seeing things on the festival. How do you think that's changed? Because I feel like when you were doing this, especially at the peak years of this, the horror festival scene wasn't quite the same that it is now. It didn't have the kind of the ever presence. You didn't have every city with a dedicated horror film festival, so the discovery process must have been a lot harder.
Yeah, and Fantastic Fest was something I kind of hit near the end of it. I think the first one I went to was 2011, and I wrapped it up in 2013. So that was only 2 Fantastic Fests where I got to go to kind of find new stuff. We have Screamfest here in LA, which is always good because it's completely indie. We have Shriek Fest. So, the festivals are always fun. It was fun for me just because it wasn't just me sitting at home with a DVD or a Blu-ray. But at the same time, it was like, it's hard to review those movies honestly the way I do. Because, it's especially at the indie fests, it's like, well, these guys haven't even been picked up yet. And I didn't, this was my movie for the day. I thought for sure I'd like it, and it turns out it sucked. It's just like, all right, what do I do? Do I break the concept? Do I break tradition for this one movie for these people that probably won't care anyway? or do I keep it going? So that always kind of I eventually I would watch a movie earlier in the day, like a regular movie that got released. That way, if what I saw at the festival turned out to suck, I'd just ignore it and I'd just review whatever that other thing was. And if the festival movie was good, I'd ignore the other thing. So I had to start kind of doing that. But yeah, the discovery process is harder, I think, because of social media now. Like I didn't have like Twitter wasn't around for the first. Well, I think it might have been there, but it wasn't a thing when I first started doing it. And now it's like, oh, how often do you get to find a movie? Unless you happen to be there at that premiere at Overlook or Fantastic Fest or Fantasia, wherever it happens to premiere. Uh, you're the only one that ever gets that completely untainted experience. Everybody else that wasn't there, which is usually myself, because I don't get to go to a lot of the festivals anymore now that I have a kid. It's like I don't get to discover that anymore, and now I know that it blew the roof off of this place, and now my anticipation for it is a lot higher than it should be. So that's that whole thing. So again, that's kind of why I like the Screenfest, because they are smaller films that haven't premiered yet anywhere else. I do get to kind of discover those. They maybe not be the big Your Nexts or Hereditary kind of like, where the fuck did this movie come from? That kind of thing. But at least I can go in totally blind and still have that. I have no idea what I'm in for, but I'm excited to find out kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think Screamfest is, good for that, exactly in that way, because you're going to see Hereditary on or you're going to see it in theaters. You're going to see the big things that it's awesome to see an A24 film before everyone at Fantastic. Don't get me wrong, and seeing Saint Maud that early and then having it get canceled, especially now, and it'll come out someday. But there is something cool about that. But in the same respect, I think there's something way cooler about what you said about discovering something. The discovery process is truly gone. Just like you noted, an Overlook premiere is still going to have a full theater. Even more so, a South by premiere is going to have packed houses, and it's not just a few people saying this is good. All of a sudden, when you get that film that quote unquote blew the roof off, it's hundreds of people saying that, and the anticipation, rightfully so, skews upward. And then how many times, Pet Sematary comes out, a film that I enjoyed, the Pet Sematary remake. I was one of the critics that loved it at South by. And then all of a sudden it hits theaters and everyone's kind of going, well, so that wasn't as good as South by, people said. Rah, 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 rah. The festival hype is real, and it's sometimes really hard to navigate on both sides, I think.
Yeah, so I always try to, I don't get when people at Fantastic Fest, they are so hell bent on seeing the secret screenings, and I'm like, why? It's whatever it is. It's going to be a movie that's coming out. Like I would much rather go to this weird Indonesian thing that no one might ever see again. There have been several Fantastic Fest movies I've gone to that never came out in the United States. And it's just like, wow, thank God I saw that and went to that movie versus fighting everybody else to go see, Split or whatever, one of the secret sequences were. I remember it's not horror, but Boy and His Samurai was absolutely wonderful movie. I forget what Fantastic Festival was. It was a while ago. I want to say it's like 2011 or 12. Has still not received a U.S. release here.
Yeah, I've got some on my list that do the same thing. It's like I keep a running tally throughout the year of what I see in distribution, and I've been carrying over some films, like you just said, from Fantastic Fest 3 years ago. That's like, oh, still undistributed. Like
Livid, even that's a horror example. Livid from the guys who made Inside.
Exactly.
Still not released in the U.S., but maybe never will be because it was bought by the fucking Weinsteins. So it's just like, oh, well, yeah, I'm obviously very happy I went to that versus the advanced screening of, whatever the hell that big movie
Dolomite last year. What was it?
Yeah,
I'm trying to
Machete
think of last
Kills
year.
or whatever the fuck.
Right, exactly. Yep, the Machete movies. One year it was, I forget what it was, but like one year it was like Zombie Ass Toil of the Dead. And it's like, that's the one I want to go to. I want to be there when they play Zombie Ass as the secret screening. And I think Ted Gagan was saying, like, he's like, I'm in the audience going, yes, this is awesome. And he's like, he's like 3/4 of my theater walked out, and it's like, so you're gonna leave the truly secret thing that is
Yeah.
insane to watch for the first time, but of course,
Mm.
you'll be there for Split.
Well, all I can say in that discussion is that we're not going to be talking about a movie on Split's caliber. I think this would be one of the Fantastic Fest screenings that didn't get as much of a turnout, but ended up enduring a little bit more. Um, so let's talk about today's film. We're gonna come back in just a second, and when we do, we're going to have accidentally done the sequel to the first movie in a series. It's a confusing situation. We'll talk about it in a second.
What you get and what you see, things that don't come easily. Feeling happy in my pain, ice goes within my brain.
Welcome back. So we are here today to talk about Cold Prey. It is the film that Brian has brought for us. And actually, if you go back and look at some of the interviews that he's done and some of the conversations he's had with other critics about horror, it's one that keeps coming up. And we're doing this a little weird on Certified Forgotten because we've actually talked about, if you remember, we've talked about Cold Prey 2 on our 5th episode. Rob Hunter, who recommends more Fantastic Fest films than anyone else, came on the show and talked about Cold Prey 2. And now we're doing the original film with Brian Collins. Nice symmetry to it. But Cold Prey is a 2006 film directed by Roar Uthaug, who American audiences might know as the guy who directed the big budget Tomb Raider remake. And it is a Norwegian slasher. It follows a group of friends who go out on the mountainsides, go up, ski the back of a mountain during a holiday. One of them ends up getting hurt, and the group ends up taking refuge in an old abandoned ski resort where one of the previous inhabitants still haunts the halls and collects a lot of trophies from a lot of dead skiers. It is a personal favorite of mine, so I'm very glad that Brian brought it on the show. But I don't want to actually, I want to start by asking Donato what he thought of this because you are the only one here who watched them out of order, Donato. So what did you think having watched two and then one?
I still able to appreciate both of them. I'm still very much capable of saying slashers have gotten a quote unquote bad name, like kind of post Scream, I would say. Like Scream kind of redefined things, and we just never got back to where slashers quote unquote were if we're talking about the 80s. Some people think that's a good thing, some people think that's a bad thing. I would argue and say movies like Cold Prey have been continuing the slasher mythos and trends the entire time, but no one's watching them. And Cold Prey is another one that I would rank up with Lake Bodom and Party Hard Die Young as these international slasher films that I feel like American slashers nowadays are trying to reach back on nostalgia and recreate, where it seems like international slashers are re envisioning what we used to have in a different way. And that's what makes me more excited. And Cold Prey is a fantastic example of how you take nothing but a simple stalk and kill scenario, just make it tense as fuck and just go for the kill. I mean, it's just really deadly and really gruesome. And it's able to keep that cold, chilly atmosphere sustained through the entire time.
All right. Brian, this is your pick. What made this the one you want to bring to us?
Because actually has 0 reviews on Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes. I think
It
I
fits.
remember, Donato pitched the show to me as like, all right, I'm just thinking like, how the hell am I gonna find a movie I like that doesn't even have 5 reviews? Like this is impossible. What a weird weird hole they dug themselves. And I'm like, and the first one I looked up wasn't Cold Prey. It was something else. I don't even remember now, but it actually qualified too. It had like 3 or 4. And I was just like, I don't really, that's just an example. I don't even really want to talk about that movie. I'm like, what else? And I'm just trying to think of movies that I liked that I knew kind of went under the radar. I'm like, oh, well, Cold Prey, maybe I can luck out with that. And I was like, 0 reviews. This movie has no footprint whatsoever on the old tomato meter. And I'm always happy to talk about Cold Prey, so it's just like perfect choice. Boom. So yeah, it's just like you were saying, post Scream, yeah, there was that talk. I remember like, oh, we can never go back. Like, you can't just do a normal slasher movie anymore because like they've kind of taken the piss out of it. Like, I don't know if I believe that, but Hollywood apparently did, because they stopped making them. They did a few. There was that mini wave post Scream, but they were all kind of had that same sort of Scream attitude. It was just a little bit winky. Even they're maybe not necessarily referencing other horror movies, but they were clever and hip. You know what I mean? Like there was always like a kind of a gimmick to it. And then they all died out again. They started not making money, and then things switched over to torture-y, the hardcore stuff. And that slasher wave just completely died. But like I said, foreign countries, they were just, well, we're gonna keep just doing what we do, you know. And Anchor Bay picked this one up. It's a Norwegian movie, so it could have just gone completely unrecognized here. But luckily, Anchor Bay picked it up. And they give it a dub, which we don't need to watch. And the subtitles are fine. There's not a lot of dialogue. I don't think it's out on Blu-ray yet, and I don't even know if Anchor Bay exists anymore. So I hope it's not too hard to find, but it definitely deserves more love than it got. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can confirm, as as I went to watch Cold Prey today, because I'm very good at being ahead of the game. It's not available to stream anywhere. It's not even rentable on Amazon. It's not anywhere that you can find it. So
Great.
Let's just say I had to order it to buy on Amazon. And what I mean by that is I had to go find a link. And the minute that I can buy it on Amazon, I will gladly give them my money, because again, I'm very happy to own this film.
Yeah, I think when you picked this one, Brian, I was like, oh, I'll go look it up. And then I remembered the only reason that I had seen it the first time is because I'd rented it from Vulcan Video, RIP. And I think there is something, a lot of what we talk about on the show is kind of how these movies get forgotten, things of that nature. But it's kind of refreshing to be able to watch something that isn't available on digital platforms, to watch something that is this quality in particular, because you can always find, there's a lot of VHS titles out there, or DVD titles out there that are worth watching, but you're not necessarily going to show them to a group of people and have them appreciate it in the same way you are, unless you have a lot of like-minded friends. But the thing about something like Cold Prey is I feel like I could show this to a group of people that don't care about horror, but are, like, oh, let's show me a scary movie. Let's watch something that's kind of spooky. And this is such an effective slasher and such a smart slasher that it has broad appeal. Like anybody that wants to watch a scary movie would like this movie in particular. And you have to commit to it. You have to go seek out a physical copy of it in order to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, I rewatched it last night, and my wife actually sat and watched part of it again. Again, she had already seen it. She recognized it even. I mean, she's not a big horror person, and and my review was 2009 or 10, so that was probably when she watched it. So we're talking a decade. And she still was like, "Oh yeah, this one." Like, like, "Oh, this one stuck out of all the crap that she watched with me back in the day, before we had a kid." She used to kind of, sit in for more of this stuff than she does now. It's just like, wow, like obviously makes an impact if somebody that does not have much of an interest in the stuff can not only recognize it, but like enjoy watching it, a chunk of it again. It doesn't require, horror 101, knowledge. If a complete newcomer watching Scream, a lot of that's going to go over their head. They're going to be like, "Wait, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, what is this Randy guy talking about?" This doesn't operate under that same rule. It's just a straight ahead. Like almost. I'm not saying it's the same level of quality, but like almost the way the original Halloween was, where it's so simple and yet just done perfectly for what it is. The plot is, you already said the plot. It's, some kids go snowboarding, one gets hurt, they go to a house, there's a killer there, and he kills them all. Boom, that's it. It's not complicated. It's just effective. And that's, something that I think got missing. Something got lost along the way.
Well, yeah, I think the simplicity is something that a lot of people get wrong. And a lot of horror filmmakers, as we mentioned before, especially at stateside, they wanted to get cute with slashers and they wanted to start doing things that were different. And that is fine. I'm in no way naysaying that. But what happens is you lose touch with what the slashers were originally about, which again is typically younger characters stuck in a scenario where they're probably not going to live, but the dread is still there. The danger is still there, and the threat is still there. When you start getting too cute with the comedy, when you start getting too cute with things like that, and you can't pull it off, that's what's going to kind of sink your ship, so to say. But Cold Prey, as you have just said, skiers and snowboarders hold up in a lodge, and there is something there that should not be there. Simple, absolutely cut and dry. And even getting back to, your wife recognizing the film, I think that's even looking at the DVD cover now on my computer screen, it kind of has this grayish overtone. It's like more monochromatic. There's not a lot of color. It's very dark, not dark, but it's very grim, I would say.
Yeah.
And
Blue.
yeah, heavy blues, heavy grimness. It works. It gives it its own unique identity, and it just gives you this sense again of gravity and graveness. It's almost like a graveyard kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, there's some humor in it, but it's character humor. It's
Right.
friends, and I mean, we can talk a little bit more about this in a second, but before I get ahead of myself, it's like they'll make a little wisecrack to each other that feels like a natural thing a friend would say. It's not like they're making a joke, and that's what kind of works about it. But the other thing, just to go back to the Friends thing, rewatching it now, like I know I've seen it again at some point in between when I first started in 2009 or 10 and now. I know I watched it at one other point, but it's been at least probably 5-6 years anyway. So obviously I've seen a lot of stuff since then, and it was I forgot how likable the kids were, and that is something that has definitely gone astray over the years. And also that their intergroup drama doesn't make them unlikable. Their intergroup drama is the main girl isn't sure she wants to move in. She wants her boyfriend to move in with her, and he kind of does want to move in with her, which is a nice kind of flip. It's usually the guy that doesn't want to commit. The other couple is the girl's a virgin. She's not sure she's ready yet. And the guy's kind of pissed off at first, but then he's like, because he thinks obviously she's not a virgin, and when he finds out she is, he's like, oh my god, I'm a fucking asshole, like I'm the worst. He's not like, he doesn't get like meaner about it. He's like instantly like, Jesus Christ, what a shithead I am, and tries to make her breakfast and stuff. So it's like, okay, these are relatable, for lack of a better word, sweet natured kind of problems. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not, because nowadays, like the one I always just stay thinking of, it just pissed me off so much, was the Chainsaw 3D, where 40-year-old Alexander Daddario, her boyfriend is fucking her best friend, which is A, obnoxious, but B, she never even finds out about it. Like the boyfriend and the girl and the other girl die before she's ever made privy to this. So it's like, why did you introduce this element that has no payoff on anything? Like it had zero bearing on her, on Daddario, and all it did was just make me dislike, the two other main characters in the movie for no reason. And like I've seen that in so many slashers, like body count kind of movies over the past decade or so, where it's just constantly like, the lead is either having an affair, like she's fucking her boyfriend's best friend, or her best friend's fucking her boyfriend. There's always something that, because it's like, oh, we need to create drama. Like, well, why can't you create drama that's relatable and nice? It's, like this movie did. It wasn't difficult for them to just be like, all right, what can we do to develop these characters a bit? How about one of them just isn't sure she wants her boyfriend to move in yet? Boom, done. And it gives the movie a nice little thing where she, spoiler, I guess, the topic comes up that, he kind of wants to move in. She's not sure she wants him to move with her. She realizes that the guy is kind of great. She slips her house key into his pocket for him to find later. You know what I mean? Like, it's this nice little runner. And it's just like, okay, now I like both of these people. I want them to live. Fuck, one of them doesn't. Now I'm kind of bummed about it. But it's just like, it makes it seem so simple. And yet so many slashers just cannot find themselves able to get that little bit across. And even the fifth wheel guy, the forgotten Weasley brother there, the guy that gets hurt.
Morton Tobias.
Morton Tobias. Yeah, why they always say his full name?
Always say his full name.
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm like, is it like you guys? Is there two Mortons and they have to distinguish?
Yeah, differentiate the whole
Morton,
time.
the Norwegian from Matthew. but it's like they don't dislike him for being there, being a fifth wheel. They're all super quick to help him out when he gets hurt. They all seem to genuinely like him, even though he's kind of like the silly comic relief. I don't need a girlfriend, I jerk off kind of guy. I mean, like it's just like they're real friends. Like I
Yeah.
understand that these people are friends. Another thing that like so many just don't get right at all. I'm usually just like, why do any of these people hang out? They all seem to hate each other.
No, and I think that's a big point too, because you mentioned drama before. And to me, I'm watching a slasher for the drama of the situation. I'm watching a slasher because I'm tuning in to see people in peril, and that should be dramatic enough. I agree with you 100%. Cole Prey gets right, is giving you characters that you can relate to and that you can fall in love with a little bit as they are axed off, because that will heighten the drama. But you don't need, I've seen these indie slashers. There was one called Pitchfork, and I want to say there were like 10 characters, and 3 of them are cheating on other spouses. Like 2 of them get pregnant out of nowhere and then die immediately. Or sorry, they announce they're pregnant out of nowhere just before they die. So like you can feel bad about it. And there are 20 different subplots that don't matter at all. And they just make you hate these characters more and more. And it just sucks the life out of any kind of emotion that can happen when a killer then offs one of these 10 nameless assholes who were just thrown on screen. Where Cole Prey it's not even a big body count. We're only talking about a cast of 5 people, and maybe not all of them even die. So the body count, it doesn't even have to be tremendous. But if the deaths matter, if we care about these people and we're connected enough to them where a few of the deaths are just really effective and really well done, that's still a much better horror film and a much better slasher, especially than the slasher film that throws a body count of 20 at you, but you just don't give a shit about any of the bodies in the pile.
Yeah, you don't want to be devastated when these people die. Like you don't want to get like have they can't be super. You just mentioned what was it called Pitchfork. I don't know if
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
but yeah, making them pregnant is just a horrible thing to do because it's just like now you're fucking completely bummed out that this person is dead. Like you're like, oh, like there's no, we are here to have a little bit of fun, and I think the movie really finds that balance really well where you like the characters but you're not like weeping when they die, what I mean, like, but you're not cheering either,
Right.
which is something that a lot of them get wrong too. Whether you like them or not, they tend to treat the death scene as like this big heroic, like, look at this, everybody cheer because Jason just used this out of nowhere implement to kill the guy, and like, woo, like, well, I mean, I guess Jason can get away with it just because it's like part 9 or whatever, and like it's like, all right, they got to distinguish somehow. But here, it's just like the kills are good, but they're not. You're not applauding for them. They're not like incredibly, graphic or implementing some kind of strange device to do it, or even like going overboard with the gore. The quote unquote money shot. It's just a guy killing people with his pickaxe. He's not making a show out of it. So they really do get that balance really, really well. They get it. It's right there on that fine line between I don't hate these people, but I don't love them so much either that I'm bummed out by watching their demises, because that obviously is kind of what we're here for. If we're going to watch a slasher movie, if you watch a slasher movie, nobody dies. You haven't gotten, what
You've missed the slasher element.
Yeah. It's just a movie about people hanging out, apparently. Yeah, it's and well, you guys did the sequel, but the sequel got that right too. I think there's a third one, a prequel that I've not seen because it's not available in the U.S.
I won't. I've heard too many bad things. I won't touch that one.
Yeah.
But I want to say, kind of to echo what the two of you said. I mean, Donato has heard me talk on this show and in other places before about like exactly what you guys talked about. You need to make your characters likable for a slasher to work. But I think what's interesting about Cold Prey specifically for me is that, there is a certain subsection of horror fans, and over the years, the focus of the horror genre is sort of shifted away from the survivors to the killers. And that's fine. There's a lot of people that are into it. Like you were saying, Brian, they want to see Freddy or Jason kill somebody in new and exciting ways. They aren't about the teenagers and the survival. But I think one of the things that this movie does that sort of tips the hand is the killer in this kind of sucks. And I don't mean that in terms of is not effective over the course of the film, but there
Mm.
aren't any of those flamboyant, flashy elements that you think of with like your self-aware slashers. That this is not a character that's designed to be an action figure later down the line or anything like that. He doesn't have much of a backstory, especially in this one. He doesn't have much of a backstory at all other than the last few minutes of the movie. A lot of him is just sort of this ever-present force of death, and it really makes you think less about him and his motivations and more about the teenagers or the young adults, I'll say. And part of what makes that appealing for me is the fact that like even we again the theme that comes up in this particular episode that I've enjoyed is the idea of what does horror learn from itself. A lot of people looked at classic movies like Halloween and said, "Oh, it's this alpha and omega fight between the final girl and the killer," and that makes everybody else who's there collateral damage. They're there to die. Their entire purpose of them is to develop the character by dying. And this movie takes a moment and says, "Wait a second! Like each of these people is a loss, and it's not just a loss for the character; it's also a loss for the audience. We lose spending time with them when they die. It's sad. It remembers that there are more characters than just the killer and the final girl in a movie, and it does that part right."
And it makes you believe that maybe the final girl won't be the only one left alive. You know what I mean? Like there's a strong, I won't say which character, for the people that are going to track this down, but there's another character who you watch the whole movie, like survive a bit. You know what I mean? Like they're around longer than you might expect from Friday the 13th 7 or something. And you get, it's just like, oh, okay, so I get to keep worrying for that person. I'm never really worried about the final girl. Yeah, every now and then they do kill. Somebody was bringing up the other day the Dorm that Drip Blood, spoiler, where they do kill the final girl, and it's just like this weird, like, Jesus, like, what the fuck's wrong with you people? Why'd you kill the final girl? But like, it's rare to have that other person, and that you can kind of like, shit, are they gonna survive or not? Like, you don't know. And it's always nice when that happens. You can't do it too often because then it's just another cliche that, yeah, obviously there's going to be the secondary character is obviously going to live, but I did like that. In fact, I had forgotten whether or not the only reason I kind of was like pretty sure was whether or not because the sequel exists,
Right.
but because the sequel picks up right where this one left off. But it was kind of fun to kind of go through that journey again, like being like, I can't really remember if this person dies or not. Good luck this time. maybe this time I'll make it out of it.
Maybe this time
It's
you
like
were
a
right.
Choose Your Own Adventure DVD all of a sudden.
Was this Final Destination 3?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Cold Prey 2 just a little bit at the end because these movies are you can't separate them in my book.
Yeah.
But one thing we talk about the character work. There's going to be a lot of fans that are going to be excited to hear about that. There's going to be some people that are listening. They're just like, but like, is it a good horror movie? Are the scares effective? Is it bloody in all the right ways that I'm looking for? So I love this movie. I don't have anything I need to say about it. So I want to listen to the two of you talk about the horror elements of it. Like, does it get the jump scares right? Does it get the stalking scenes right? Is that stuff entertaining in addition to being good character work?
Yeah, there's one that I always like the fake out where somebody opens a door and it's framed in a way that us dyed in the little horror fans are gonna know that as soon as they shut the door, the killer's gonna be right there on the other side. Like behind it. Basically, it's hard to explain without a visual, but I'm sure. Basically, the mirror scare, but with a door. When somebody shuts the bathroom mirror, the killer's behind them. And there's one of those in that, but he's not there. And I love that because then it's like a reset, and they get the editing just perfect for when he does jump out. So you're still kind of like you haven't even fully recovered from he's not there when the killer actually does jump out from a different position. And I like shit like that. And you were saying earlier that this killer's not somebody you want an action hero of or whatever action figure. It's like they don't even show him in his entirety until like over an hour into the movie. He's just feet and stuff,
and not in a kind of like cool reveal sort of way.
No,
just sort
it's
of
just
like
like
it
a
doesn't
matter of
matter.
fact. Yeah. Like honestly, if you show until yesterday, but if you'd show me a picture, I'd probably have trouble remembering who it was from. Because he's just kind of this like it's almost what's that suit that the guys use? ghillie suit. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, yeah.
In war, it's almost like one of those things, like just like this sort of like survivalist, full body covering. You can see a little bit of his face, but he's usually in the shadows or in the background or whatever, so you don't even fully get a sense of that until the very end when he's, they're out in the sun and the mask comes off of it. So yeah, I think they really do a good job with that sort of stuff because there's kind of like that creep element, like from the first Friday the 13th. Like I rewatched all the Friday the 13th a couple weeks ago, and Shudder did that marathon, and obviously I've seen the movie a million times, but it never really dawned on me. Maybe just because it's just doing it back, with all the others. That the first one is really this kind of creepy movie, and how cool it would have been to watch it in 1980 completely unaware, because I know for me, I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised for you guys as well. It's always been the one that's not Jason. It's the one that's his mom. You know what I mean? So you're always kind of watching it as this sort of less than thing, versus what people in 1980 got, which are like, this is just a normal slasher movie that's actually pretty good. But there's like a real element of creepiness to it. And I think it's because they don't show the killer ever. Like it's just feet in the hand. You don't ever see a full body. It's POV shots and stuff like that. And the Cold Prey gets a little. I assume, I can't remember, as it's been a while since I watched it. But I assume in the sequel he's a little more heroic because now we know who he is. But in this one, he's really kind of confined, to the background and quick shots, underlit shots, so that you're never really getting him as the star.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he kind of looked like he could have been an extra on John Carpenter's The Thing. Like,
Yeah.
he could have just been walking around in the background, and that would have been exactly what he looked like to me.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with what you were saying about the behind the door scare, because I noticed that so quickly, and I noticed it for the exact same reason, because however many horror movies I see, and however many indie horror movies think you have to do exactly what every other horror movie has done. So you have to have a mirror scare, you have to have a behind the door scare. The issue is we always know we're coming. I see that door propped, and the camera just racks focus right to the door, and you're like, okay, so it's perfectly in frame now, something's behind it. And Cold Prey, it does it that one time, but it plays with preconceptions a few other shots too. And I won't detail them all, but it does a really good job of, like, there's one where McCall is walking down a hallway that is dimly lit. There's doors on both his sides. He's just kind of like meandering and not paying attention. And the way the camera focuses, you're like, okay, so the killer's going to jump out of one of these doors and rip him inside. Like, that's just what you're waiting for. It's what it's building up, but it never happens. And it does these never happen moments a few different times, but I never got sick of them, because your heart is still racing a little bit, and your heart is, our brain is programmed to think this is going to happen. We've seen it too many times, but it never does. And that's what I love, that element of horror, when it can make you scared without even doing what you think it's going to do. It's like a neurological game. It's weird.
And they split up, and the characters split up in natural, normal ways. They never like split up to look for somebody or whatever. So, and because for most of the movie they're unaware that there's any issue, you really get a sense of whenever somebody like, oh, let me go look at the generator, or I'm hungry, maybe we get some food, and we follow them. You're never sure. It's just like, okay, well, I know the killer's not there. I know that he's off doing this thing right now. He could be anywhere, and it keeps all those kind of mundane moments suspenseful because, again, because they've kind of kept him to the sidelines. You're not, fully tracking him every step of the way. And, that's another thing I think it does really well. It's able to generate suspense without even really doing much, just because the logistics of the location lent itself well to, we're going to split up. Like, like the guy gets, they have their little fight over not having sex. So the guy kind of goes off and she stays in the room, and then he goes up to apologize, and she's already dead, but, he's thinking she's just ignoring him, still mad at him. So he kind of goes off again, it's just like, all right, these are normal reasons for the people to be isolated, the one guy has his leg broken, so he can't go far, and it's just, they just, I keep saying it, but they just get it right.
Yeah.
And, and it applies to that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, there's a there's one kill in particular, or one scene in particular that I always think of when I think of this movie, and that's the one where two of the characters are watching through a window as another character is going through a shed outside.
Right.
And as I think about it, I realize that I've only ever seen this scene done kind of like um, two ways, which is either we watch this slow scene where you know these two people, the killer and the character are doomed to collide. Usually I'm part of the audience and only the audience is seeing it, or
Mm.
usually the killer pops up out of nowhere, stabs or murders the person, and then there's a big scream and everybody runs.
Yeah.
But it's the first time that I've watched characters watch a character be
Mm.
doomed, and it's
Yeah.
a really effective little spook, because it's either really fast or the
Mm.
other characters aren't part of it at all, and
Yeah.
to kind of like have to live with them living with what they see about to happen. You're like, oh, this gets under your skin a little bit. This is well done.
And they do a good job of balancing the point where they're oblivious to where they know they're in danger,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that you know can sink or swim. A slasher movie. I think if you go too long with all the characters being oblivious, especially if it's a crime. I mean, Halloween gets away with it because there's only two other people across the street, so it's okay. It was not like Laurie would have been. Where is her? You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
but when you have like the one that drives me nuts is fucking Madman. I know people love Madman, but that movie is literally nonstop series of people going like, "Hey, where's Jimmy? He hasn't come back for a while. I'm gonna go look for him." Then they die, and then it's just like, "Where'd Jeff go?" Like, "Oh, he went to go look for Jimmy." "Oh, I'm gonna go find Jeff," and then they die. It's just like, where did Carl go? Like, Carl went to find Jeff, who went to find Jimmy. Oh, well, I'm gonna go find Carl. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, when are you people gonna realize that something's fucking wrong here? Like idiots. But when they find out too early, that also kind of makes them kind of stupid because and a couple of the Friday 13th, 8 in particular, which I like 8. I give 8 more cred than most people will afford 8. Manhattan, but they find out about Jason way too early, I think. And I think that may be part of what makes the movie kind of boring for people because it's, they don't have fun for long enough. And there's not that natural kind of splitting up. And so it's just like they're constantly on alert. And then it's just like, well, it's this one guy. And now everything you do is kind of stupid, for the movie to work. So you got to find that right balance of like letting them be oblivious for a while, but not so long that it's just like the movie has to be over by the time anybody that might survive is aware of the killer. So this one does it good. I think they're hip to the guy. I think after the second death is when the two of them dead, and then there's 3 left, and that's when they're like, shit, there's a killer here, and that's when they kind of get more. They go on the defense.
That's a lot of awareness per square feet, considering how big the space they're in. I accept the math on that. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask, as our last question here, Brian, I want to ask you kind of about the reception of this, because you said before you were shocked that there were 0 reviews of this on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I don't even remember who recommended this. It must have been Rob Hunter who recommended this on Twitter for me, and I had to go to a video store and get it. Accessibility is always part of the problem for a lot of these horror films that we talk about. But like, what do we need to do to make this a household name? Like, what do we need to do to make this the sort of title when somebody says slashers aren't good and they're like, but 2006 Cold Prey, let's talk about that one. How does it kind of generate a little bit more knowledge even within the horror community?
I would love if Shudder could. I know Shudder had 3 at one point, which we mentioned earlier has never been released in the US, but I guess in the UK they had all of them apparently, because I looked it up again last night. Because again, I was just like, is Coldplay 3 ever coming out here? And it's like, nope, apparently not. It's still not available. But I got excited for a second because I just Googled it and then I see a Shudder link. I'm like, what the fuck? It's on Shudder? Like, how did I miss this? But it's Shudder UK, which gets different movies than us. I'm not sure if it's still on there. So your UK audience,
listener, singular,
they might know what's up. But if Shudder US could get a hold of at least the first one, that would be no. I know the first one was Anchor Bay. The second one was Scream Factory. Actually, it might have been just been Shout Factory. It might have been before the Scream Factory label existed, but also just on DVD. But yeah, if they're not available streaming VOD, then they have no chance anymore because not everybody's going to be like me or you guys and just be like, all right, I will get a physical copy of this movie. Like, that's just too much work for some people now. Um, and that's even if it's actually available. Is it only available for third party people
Yeah, then it's completely
on
out there.
Amazon? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we could talk about it all we want, but if nobody can actually get a copy of it, that's kind of moot. But yeah, if Shudder could pick it up, or just even Amazon Prime or whatever, however they navigate their weird rights issues things. I mean, a trilogy set would be lovely. Just to get them all in one place for once, and let me finally see the third one that apparently kind of sucks, but I still want to see it. I would host a screening of it tomorrow if I could.
I
Nobody
would
show
go
up,
to
but
where you are to watch that screening for sure.
we would split everybody up.
Yeah, you can go on Amazon right now, and for $12.47, you can get a used like new copy of Cold Prey
Oh,
in
yeah.
the original Blockbuster case. It's actually
Ooh.
highlighting the fact
Ooh.
that it's in a Blockbuster case, and I think
That's
that's why
amazing.
it's that extra 10. Because I see some other ones here that are like $4, and I mean honestly, like I might order one of these for just $4. Like whatever, I can take someone's used copy, but I think when we always talk about it, and we always talk about why was it ignored, and again, I can go on Rotten Tomatoes, and even myself, being the critic on some of these, find a horror movie that I guarantee you no one has heard of, yet it still has more Rotten Tomatoes reviews than something like Cold Prey. When it's mentioned in our circles and it's mentioned with other critics and stuff, they're immediately going, yeah, I love that movie. But then there's still no reviews on it. And we have to think about if it played any festivals. We have to think about at the time, 2006, obviously not much going on in genre representation on Rotten Tomatoes. So all that stuff playing into it, I think it's just a really weird time for an amazing movie to fall through the cracks, because it wouldn't fall through the cracks in today's day and age. I mean, if
Oh,
it
no,
came
no.
out today at
Yeah.
Fantastic Fest, we know how many people would be thumping this and how many people would be saying you have to see it. So I think this was just a product of the era it came out, and that's weird to say, but I mean, 2006 is quite a damn long time ago at this point.
I'm actually gonna look because now what I'm thinking now too is I think that when it came out from Anchor Bay, they did DVD only. Yeah, so I got it in 2009, so it probably came out late 2008 or whatever. But
Right? Yeah, exactly.
that was when the transition from DVD to Blu-ray was like really taking hold. Like the initial HD DVD versus Blu-ray war had ended, with Blu-ray becoming the victor, and then everything was starting to get released on that. And I think movies that were DVD only, like this one was, started slipping through the cracks then. And now it's just even worse because it didn't even make the jump to streaming or anything. And also, again, it's from a distributor that no longer exists. So it's just like, it just kind of got fucking hammered, across the board. And, this is Anchor Bay put this out, the same time they were doing Hatchet and Behind the Mask and stuff like that. But those movies Hatchet had the sequels, and it had both of them had Robert Englund and Kane Hodder, so it's like those movies got that extra boost from the horror, the horror sites, because just the name recognition got them out there more and got them into more people's hands. But this is a Norwegian movie from a first time. I think this is his first film, his first feature film, his first full length film anyway. So it's just like, well, what is this? You have Hatchet and Behind the Mask, which are Hatchet's doing the thing that we were talking about earlier with like the amazing death scenes and like the iconic killer that you can get an action figure of. And Behind the Mask is going into the cleverness and doing something really cool. And Cold Prey is just a regular slasher, and as good as it is, it's kind of hard to fight for attention, both from the fans and I would assume from Anchor Bay, because if they all three of these movies kind of came out around the same time, and it's just like, all right, we have this one that's obviously the star of a new franchise. We have this one that's got the rave critical reviews and has a terrific Robert Englund performance, and then we have this Norwegian thing with a guy in a ski mask. It's just like, okay, well, which ones are we going to really pump, and which ones are we going to just hope for the best for?
Yeah, and I think that's a big point too, saying again, even 2009, because it didn't come out in 2006 for the US. I mean, it was 2007 for the UK, it was 2009 for the US. All those reasons you just listed. then you also have to think in number one, international. 100% people were not as into international cinema as they are now, especially horror fans who just at the time wanted something simple and wanted something they can do, and subtitles did not fit into that, into what they wanted. And number two, the stigma of VOD and straight to DVD at the time. Again, it was different then. I think VOD was a harder sell when something just went right there. So that stigma existed for a reason. We know now, years later, because VOD is just a viable option for films that can't go theatrical and can do better on VOD, and doesn't mean a quality thing. But in 2009, it had some quality connotations. So I think that's a good point right there. That's two huge reasons why it fell through. And it didn't really have festival hype because it played in 2007. It did Slam Dance, Cleveland International, and Amsterdam Fantastic Fest. 2007, a little later, it did London Fright Fest, which, I mean, London Fright Fest is a bigger deal. I mean, that's fine, but nothing else really after that. So it didn't have that kind of US festival representation. So maybe everyone in Norway knew about it, maybe everyone overseas knew about it, but it just didn't. Yeah, over here, it was just another random international horror film that everyone was kind of like, well, I'm just going to go rent Hatchet.
And, you know, maybe if Tomb Raider had turned out better or a bigger hit, maybe people would be more excited about seeing the guy's older movies. Because I don't want to get too far off track, but all of his movies I think are worth tracking down. He did The Wave. I guess The Wave would be like the closest thing he had to like a sort of breakthrough here, because at least people kind of saw it and it played theaters. Limited release. I forget who did it. Probably IFC or one of those.
I think it was Magnet, actually.
Magnet,
for some reason,
okay,
I think
yeah.
it was Magnet, but
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I got to go see that in theaters. So, but he did another one that's called, I forget the Norwegian name. It's called Escape, in English, and it's got the same girl from Coldplay. The final girl from Coldplay is the villain. And it's basically, I've described it as medieval Judgment Night. It's a girl, there's like it's during the plague, I think, and a girl's family gets killed, and the girl gets away, and the people that killed her just chase her through the plague and medieval highlands, or wherever the hell it was, mountains of Norway.
Holy shit, I want to watch
And
that.
it's fucking great. And she like starts to fight back. I mean, of all of his movies, it's clearly I would think the one that got him the Tomb Raider gig, and it's a really fucking cool movie. So I've been, ever since Coldplay, I've been like keeping my eye on this guy, and just constantly waiting for him to get that, that kind of big breakthrough. And I thought Tomb Raider might be it, but I mean, it wasn't a complete disaster, but it wasn't exactly let's not say, this is to say it's not his best film.
it wasn't the launching pad that everyone
No,
thought
no.
it might be
Yeah,
into
yeah.
Hollywood stardom.
Yeah, I checked his IMDb. It does not look like he's gotten anything else big going yet from that.
Well, and
he's not doing a sequel. Yeah,
I was going to say they gave Ben Wheatley the sequel, so
yeah. They get his British counterpart in terms of like movies that never get released.
oh my god, yes.
Yeah, I suppose when you have less marketability than Ben Wheatley to
Yeah.
wow audiences,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know how you're doing.
The first one didn't wow enough audiences. We need some of the sharp commercial instincts of Ben Wheatley.
Well, there it is. Go find Cold Prey if you can. Dig it up. Make Brian and the Mats very happy.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a lot of movies that are released that don't deserve the recognition they get more than this. So collectively, everyone help us right that wrong. Brian, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast, man. And I want to give you an opportunity. I know that you've got an old familiar venue that you're picking up with. So where's some places that people can go to check out your writing and follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Brian W. Collins, and Instagram the same. If you like pictures of jigsaw puzzles, 'cause that's pretty much all I use my Instagram for. And I still write for Birth Movies Death, and occasionally for Fangoria. And when time allows, I update Horror Movie a Day, which again is very, very erroneously titled at this point. But there's a little disclaimer at the top, like it's not a day anymore. Don't give me shit.
That's good SEO though. You can't go back on that SEO.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I read anything else. And I have a book, Horror Movie Day, the book, which has, I believe Coldplay is in there. If not, then it should be. But it's based on the side I picked, basically kind of like what you guys do, movies that kind of fell through the cracks. I picked a year's worth of movies that were not as popular and did not get old and new. It's not just newer stuff. It goes all the way back to the 1922 or something like that, I think. But movies that not every horror fan has seen. They're not all perfect films. They're not even all great films, but they're all, from watching a movie every single day of my life for 6+ years, these 365 struck a chord and they stuck out for one reason or another. So I highlighted those and gave you a recommendation for every day of the year. So you can get that book. You can get that book on Kindle if you like. It's cheaper. If you want a big doorstop, you can get the physical version. It's a pretty fucking heavy book.
Just making sure there's not like they can't order it through your website or anything. They don't.
No, just Amazon. Okay. I mean, it was self-published through Amazon, so I mean that's basically the best way. Yeah. Unless you have like here in LA, we have Dark Delicacies. They carry it. So if you have like a horror themed bookstore in your area and they're open right now, then maybe they have it.
Nice. Donato, how do people follow you? You've got I feel like you've sort of stepped into these shoes of watching everything regardless of quality. So how do people follow your adventures?
My exploits are mostly recorded on Twitter at Donato Bomb. You can also find me on Instagram and Letterboxd at the same name. And you can find my writing on such websites right now is mainly Nerdist, Flickering Myth, Blade Disgusting, and a few other notables that I will just tweet out anyway. But if you want to follow my horror a kind of day journey, I guess not to rip that completely, but horror mostly kind of a day at times. Just follow me on Twitter and I'll tweet out the posters and you'll see them and go, why the fuck is he watching that? And honestly, most of the time the answer is I don't fucking know.
Yeah. And if you're a publicist, I mean, come on, you've never had an easier mark in your life than Matthew Donato. As for myself, you can follow me on Twitter at Labsplice, LABSPLICE. And I write for the Austin Chronicle. I write for the Playlist. I've got bylines at a couple of different places. So come check us out. I cannot claim to be anywhere as prolific as these two gentlemen, but I do what I can with what I've got. Brian, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thank you.
Really glad you were here to preach the good word of Cold Prey. Because like I said, this is one of my absolute favorite horror movies. I'm not a slasher guy. This is a step outside of my comfort zone for me, but I fucking love it. And it makes me so happy. We've had 15 episodes, and 2 of them are the Cold Prey movies. That's absolutely what I'm here for. Donato, you want to take us out?
Demon Win.